Good morning, welcome back to Adventures with Dice. I'm Rob and I'm your host for these videos, and today we're going to be picking back up with my Icrpg campaign, which I'm using mostly 2nd edition core for, and my GM notebook. Now, we were on hiatus through Christmas, which I talked about in my last video, and took a pretty extensive break. And then I was in the hospital for a while. But everything got a little more back to normal this past Saturday night as we were able to get together and pick back up with our campaign and start playing it again with Return of the Horn Beast. So if you haven't been following along but you want to know what went on in the campaign, there's a playlist on the channel, an Icrpg playlist that has all the episodes in there. So just start at the beginning and watch your way through and you'll see what all happened. The Horn Beast was one of the first adversaries the team faced, the team of heroes. And put this over here. They had just recently, if you remember, stopped the witches who had taken over the Blight Witch who had taken over the monastery up north to end the blight, and then took a skiff downriver to get back a little faster. And where we ended that game was they had come into town, and there were a few people who knew what they were doing, and they were congratulating them. But then there were the majority of the people are very much behind these witch hunters. They see them as authority figures. They believe what they say, that they're the good guys, and that they're here to stop the blight as well. And that's when the heroes find out that the witch hunters, the White Flame witch hunters, have taken a girl, a simple girl, from town who mutters to herself a lot, accused her of witchcraft and being the cause behind the blight, and they have taken her out into the woods to execute her. And I left them with, at the end of that session, a conundrum. Like, you can either go after the girl, or you can go after the Horn Beast, who is now returned, and you hear people screaming at the end of the street as the Horn Beast has drug up this big wagon and he's throwing people into it to replenish his food supply that the heroes took away from him in the first game. So they could also split the party if they wanted to. We kept it in turns, and I let them go through and have a turn of debate as far as what they were going to do, and then general consensus was they were going to go after the Horn Beast because, you know, needs of the many and all that. So that is where we were picking up. And, you know, I had a couple of timers running from the very beginning because they can see the Horn Beast at the end of the street. He is a threat in this encounter. There's also an ambush in this encounter. And if you remember, the witch hunters are hunting down anyone who uses magic and trying to burn them or hang them. And so the cleric, Delphi, and the mage, Jules, are keeping it very low-key and trying not to show off the fact that they have magical abilities. Because most people in town don't know that they have them. So there is the also threat of having to hide their magical abilities in this fight from the locals. So we have two timers running in the beginning, and the first timer is, I don't tell them what it's for, but I know what it's for. It's a countdown to how long before the girl dies in the woods at the hands of the witch hunters. The second timer is for the Horn Beast, the big guy here, which I'll show you in a minute, and how long before he decides he's not going to stay here and fight. He's going to grab his wagon and drag his prisoners back off to the Black Ruins. And they don't know that that's what that's for either. But anyway, those timers are counting down as we start. The treat that I did put in here, which they managed to come up with their own treat. They did not use the treat at all, but they came up with a way to hide their magic use from the people in town, because once this horn beast started, snatching people, the locals, they start panicking, running into their homes and buildings and stuff, and they're looking out windows and watching what goes on. So if the player characters are using magic to defeat him, yeah, that's great on one hand because it's going to help them defeat him faster. But on the other hand, it's not good because if a lot of the locals, they are believing the propaganda that is being put out by these witch hunters, and they will report on the player characters and cause them a lot of problems. So the treat that I put in was I had a small wood hay storage barn here, and if they could set fire to it, it would produce a lot of smoke that would obscure the use of their magic. They never even looked at it. They just plowed into the thing, and they did. They've learned to work in unison after several adventures together, and took down the Horn Beast and his allies pretty quickly. So I think we've seen the last of any Horn Beast for quite some time. But what I'm going to do now is I'm going to switch views and go over to the table view and show you the room, show you the encounter and how it played out. And then the role play and advance in the story, we'll come back for that as far as what happened afterwards. So here we go. All right, welcome to the town of Oakvale, and this is the setup that I was using for our encounter with the return of the Horn Beast. Now, the heroes had been down here talking to the townsfolk when they noticed the Horn Beast down here, which is my big old Minotaur guy, and can't really see it all that well, I guess. But he's down here chunking people in his wagon and getting him some Dungeon Dash going on. That joke is courtesy of Jason. So, what happens is they break into a fight. Now, remember right here, or this right here is the wood shack that they could have set on fire. Yes, I know these are 2D flat buildings, but they're a cool set that I got way back when. I like to use them because, well, they don't take up a lot of space. And I have tons of terrain that already takes up a ton of space. And these work really well. They have an exterior and an interior on them. I've used them in some other videos. And then they also have, like some of them have a damaged side to them as well. But anyway, our team started off with Jason's dwarf Dolgan. He makes a move, and then he makes another move into this alleyway. And then Tina's mage Jules, she makes a move and then makes another move to here. And I have to stop them right there because at that point, the Horn Beast has already howled. He's locked the cage on the door. He's, fire blazing red eyes. He's mad. He recognizes these guys as the ones who hurt him. And he was hoping they would be here because he has two buddies with him that were laying in wait back here. So we got a couple of more Minotaurs, and these are just the old 3D printed Minotaurs that are like the Hero Quest based Minotaurs that you can use in Hero Quest. And so they stop right there, realizing that they've turned the wrong corner and come to the wrong neighborhood. Jimmy is over here with Ballin, and he starts making far shots down here and hitting the Minotaur, which really ticks him off. And then Delphi, she moves over here, and then over here next to Tina, or Jules. And then it's the Horn Beast turn, my turn. This one rushes up, and this one rushes up here. And the Horn Beast, he rushes up here. However, he moved far, so he's not able to do anything else. And we go into the next turn. Because both of these guys whiffed, these new ones. They didn't hit anything. Delphi, she ends up moving around and drawing her bow and starts popping arrows into this guy. Tina had done a little bit of magic, but they were making sure. She cast one spell, but everything else she did was making sure that none of the population could see her using magic back here. So she's fighting toe-to-toe with this guy. Jimmy is pegging this dude on his turn, and they lay waste to him pretty quick. I think he lasted till the end of the turn, and then boom, Minotaur down. Which then allowed Jason to turn his attention to this Minotaur. Dolgan did, and he starts fighting with him. And then basically, long story short, is he moves out of combat here to taunt the Minotaur out into the open. And when the Minotaur gets out into the open, this horn beast starts getting pegged again. And after a couple of turns and amazing critical rolls by Jimmy, he rolled back-to-back criticals and ended up dropping the other Minotaur here. Now this guy over here, he took a bunch of damage, and he decided, hey, I'm hearing my guys die. Oh no! And he starts making a run for it. To which Delphi continues to pursue and fire her bow into this guy. And Jimmy starts moving up. He makes a far move. He's headed towards the wagon. And then when we come back around here, Jules stays where she's at. This guy makes it, if he gets off here, which he did, he gets into the thick woods at the edge of town. I'm sorry, Jimmy did come up here first. He climbed up on the building, but the guy got out of sight before he could get a shot, so then he came down and started moving towards the wagon. Delphi was not going to give up on this dude, so she follows him into the woods. And then Jules, she comes down here to the edge of the woods. These guys go up. Dolgan and Ballin get up here, and they go back and get the keys to the wagon off of the big horn beast and release the prisoners that he had. And then they end up coming over here, and they're like, hey, where's Delphi at? And Jules is like, she's off in them woods over there. I think that's the sound of her getting killed. So she tries to do her atom palm out there in the woods and rolls really bad. It ends up not getting the spell off. The Minotaur who made it out into the woods, he realizes he's being pursued. He turns around, starts kicking at the ground, and he runs into her and hits her and knocks her to the ground for another 7 points of damage. So she's down to 3 hit points and nearly dead at this point. And then I think there was a joke about the Minotaur teabagging her while she was down, but he's just kind of standing there. Then the rest of them, or not the rest of them, but Dolgan and Jules come in, and she starts popping arcane bolts into this dude, and he ends up dropping. They take him down. He only had like 1 hit point left. Jimmy's character Ballin was refusing to go in the woods. He's like deathly afraid of melee combat, so he was not going in there. But they did end up killing the Minotaur and then dragging the body, or Dolgan dragged the body back to town as proof that they had killed the other one. And there was some healing going on to get Delphi back on her feet again. I did give her a hero coin because she was very heroic in the fact that she was not letting this bad guy get away. She was going to take him down. So they all come back over here. The townsfolk start coming back out, and they're like, hey, who wants steaks for dinner? Because we got some horn beast here we can throw on the grill. Which is what they end up doing, I think, for their festival they have, celebrating these guys dropping. And that's pretty much the end of that encounter, and the rest of the night was role play with some different things that happened. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to switch back to the other camera now and go over what happened between them, the White Flame Witch Hunters, and where the story seems to be progressing from this point. So here we go. Alright, with the Horn Beast defeated and the player characters, about half of them, still licking some wounds, they start making their way back into town, and roughly about 20 minutes to a half hour is expired in game time at this point. And a few minutes later, the White Flame Witch Hunters return to town, and they are proclaiming the end of the blight, the witch is dead. Which just so happens to coincide with the fact that our heroes actually ended the blight, but they're not getting any credit for it because the majority of the people are just believing what's being said by those in charge, which is the witch hunters. I swear I wasn't trying to create social commentary on this video. or on this game, but it kind of did. So anyway, I had put in here that if in my notebook, which you can see, I have an aftermath section after the fight, and I put in here that if they manage to hide their magic, the White Flame and locals will praise them as heroes for killing the Horn Beast or the Minotaurs. But if the White Flame finds out about their use of magic, or the heroes confront them about killing the girl, we can proceed to a battle breaking out right there between them and the hunters, or the witch hunters. And that didn't happen. Instead, the town broke out into festivities because, you know, the blight was ending, the witch was dead, the horn beast was dead. So the general population of the town of Oakvale, they were just super happy and super excited about how things turned out. This irked a couple of the players, one in particular, because she wanted to get credit for ending the blight and instead had to keep her character's mouth shut as the White Flame witch hunters killed an innocent girl and then got the credit for it. Now, the thing about the witch hunters is what makes them dangerous to me is the fact that they think they're right. They think they're doing the right thing. So that can be a little tricky when you have somebody who's doing horrible things, but they're doing it because they think they're doing it for the greater good. And in their mind, they may have thought this girl was really a witch and believed that they ended the blight by taking her life. But that'll come into play in the next session some. So no fight happens between Lord Caspius and the witch hunters and the player characters. And in a couple of days' time, the heroes, you know, they participated in the festivities as much as they could. Our dwarf Dolgan, he had gotten his shield rebuilt that he had burned up early on in one of the sessions. So he has a new shield that just got finished, and he went and picked it up. And our elf, our shadow, Balin, which is played by my buddy Jimmy, he is out one morning and he overhears a conversation between a page that shows up to talk to the witch hunters and and Lord Caspius. So as it turns out, Lord Caspius and his men are being called away to investigate witches that have been building a coven in the town of Broghaven. And it's a day or two travel west of here, probably about a day and a half for Caspius and his men on their big war horses. So they start gearing up and getting ready to head out of town, and Balin comes back and he gets with the group and he tells them, hey, they're headed out of town. They're going to Broghaven, which is a day and a half, 2 days down the road, and they're going there to stamp out a coven of witches in that town, which starts a pretty intense roleplay part of the session, which I didn't really go into turns here. I just let them freeform roleplay. If there were dead spots, then I would have probably kept it in turn, but they were role-playing through the whole thing, so I saw no point to do that. Just let them role-play. I mean, that's what we're here for, right? So they did, and about half the party wanted to go attack the witch hunters out on the road. The other half wanted to avoid the witch hunters at all cost, and they went back and forth about how dangerous it was to leave these men going town to town killing witches, which may or may not be witches. They don't really know. And the player characters, they came up with some pretty insane ideas. I did tell them there was a shortcut that they could take to get to Broghaven a little faster, but it was going to take them through some wild and dangerous areas, giving me a chance to set up more encounters for them. They chose not to do that because of an oversight that I made, because my wife Tina, who's playing Jules the maid, she says, "Well, have I ever been to Broadhaven before?" And Broadhaven is a town I have in the Greenway, which is kind of like the big Shire area. And without thinking, I said, "Oh yeah, sure. It's in this area. You would have traveled through there before, so you've seen it." And she goes, "Oh, good, because I have that doorway spell, and I can open a doorway to anywhere I've been or any place I know." And I was like, "Well, crap. That completely negates any chance for an encounter. It's going to zip them right ahead to the town, and I wasn't ready for them to get there yet." But that's cool because it put me on my thinking cap. I'm like, all right, let's start thinking how we're going to do this. What's going on in the town? I was anticipating the next encounter dealing with the witch hunters before they got there, but the players had a way to circumvent that and get right. So I was like, well, actually, it's cool. Let it go. So let's do it. Now, one of the neat things about this game is that Runehammer was very specific about pushing the idea of playing in sessions, planning in sessions, one session at a time. And for an old grognard like me, sometimes it's hard to do that because we're used to plotting out big storylines. But he's right, more often than not, the players tend to go do other stuff that is not pertaining to the storyline at all. And what I found is when you do stick to doing one session at a time, number one, it allows you to put a lot more thought into that particular session. So that session becomes way more fun. And on the other hand, what it does is it shows you by the end of each session where the player character's mindset is, where their interests lie, where it is they're wanting to go. And you can kind of tailor the game to what the players are really interested in. I can't count how many times in RPGs over the years it's been like, wow, why are we here? What did we come here to do? Why would I even come here? But by doing it this way, the characters become a little more invested in the story, and they want to push forward and see certain aspects of the story, which they let you know what it is they're looking for through their role play. So you just kind of have to be attentive to that. Now, that being said, when this conversation happened, I didn't know what I was doing with the witches. That was just one of several possible things they could have done. They could have said, hey, we're not going to do that at all. We're going to stay in town. And then I had a whole nother storyline for another adventure that I was going to seed that night in town and let them go off and investigate that if they wanted to. So I'm keeping it very open and letting them do what they want to do, and it kind of very sandboxy, but yet with an overarching storyline. So they decided to zip on over to the town, which kicked my brain into high gear, and I'm like, okay, well, witch hunters going to hunt witches in town of Broadhaven. That's literally all I got in my notes. I don't even know. I haven't designed Broadhaven. I don't know what the town is like. I don't know if these are real witches or if they are just like the innocent girl who got taken. I haven't planned any of that yet. But it gave me so many jumping off points and ideas that I really, really enjoyed that. And I just started running with it. And as we're talking and they're planning out what they're going to do, I started getting these ideas, which I can't go into in this video, but you'll see in the next video when they arrive in town of what's actually going on there. And I was like, okay, well, got the old 3D printer running. In fact, it's running right now, printing out some miniatures to use in that town. But when I went into the session, I didn't have any plans for that. But by the end of the session, I did have plans for it. I started formulating, well, what are they doing there? How are they tied to this blight thing and maybe this other blight witch? And is it really witchcraft that is the enemy here? Or is there something older and more powerful pulling the strings behind the scenes? So I kind of just left it on a cliffhanger. They ended up stepping through the doorway and appeared just outside of the town of Brockhaven. And it was cloudy and starting to rain when they got there. And I don't even know where this came from. I just like, just off the top of my head, I'm like, okay, Tina, you hear a voice in your head and it sounds very creepy, and it's this creepy old woman's voice, and she's like, welcome home, Jules. And then I cut the game right there, and they all just freaked out. They're like, what? You know? And at that point, at that moment, I was like, I don't know what I'm doing, but this sounds really cool. Like, I could see this in a movie or a TV show. Like, I could see something like this happening. And that's kind of how I think of it, is when they start getting into territory that I haven't planned yet, I just think, okay, well, in a movie or a TV show, what would be really cool if it happened in this scene? So there's obviously some powerful witch or witches, and they are keyed in on Jules, my wife Tina's character, because she is a mage and she has arcane abilities. And they know she's there. Now, are they friends? Are they foes? Are they innocent? Are they evil? All of that will be decided in the next night of adventure that we play through. But it left a great cliffhanger. It gave me ideas to immediately start playing off of and writing the next section of this campaign. And it even gave me a really good place to drop in a major story point that's going to be like, hey, I think we know who's behind all of this stuff going on with the Blight and these witches and everything. Was the Horn Beast ever part of that? No, the Horn Beast was never part of any of that. The Horn Beast was just, hey, here's a monster, go deal with it. They ended up leaving it alive, so I was like, okay, well, you know, he'll come back. Recurring villains and all. And I think that's played itself out at this point, and they've gotten really good at killing Horn Beast. So I don't see any point in bringing him back for quite some time, or bringing a Minotaur back for quite some time. I'm definitely going to let them face some different stuff, and there's going to be a lot of magical stuff in this next adventure / encounter that they go through. So I'm looking forward to seeing that. I'm looking forward to seeing how it plays out. I have started work on the adventure itself, setting up the rooms for it, the backstory behind what's going on in the town. And that gave me a really cool... I was like, okay, well, why are these witches here? What are they doing? Okay, well, that could tie in very well to my big bad, who I have set up, you know, behind the scenes, pulling strings and running the show. So, yeah, this could be a good place to drop that so that they know, okay, now we know who's behind stuff, and we're going to go after them to end this. And then, you know, we'll take it from there. I don't know how many sessions it'll be, but it'll be X number of sessions before we end this current story. And then we're going to come back with more second edition core characters, and still playing in Alfheim, and maybe do some other stuff. I have a Call of Cthulhu Icrpg adventure I want to run. I have some sci-fi stuff I want to do. So, I mean, there's... possibilities are endless. There's lots of stuff to do. All right, so on a final note, I am going to add in that several of you have asked me about doing a deep dive into my notebook, my GM notebook, and the kind of stuff that I keep in it, and the notes I take, and so on and so forth. Well, I am planning to do that. But what I'm waiting for is I want to get a few more things in here. And once I do, the book will be a little more complete, and it'll be a little more in-depth video. And that's what I'm aiming for at this point. So once I get a little more stuff in the notebook, I will sit down and do that deep dive video for you guys, because I've already got the second notebook set up, ready to go. And I can switch over to it at any point. But like I said, give me a chance to get a little more information in here so I can do a cooler video for you guys showing you what all's in it, and then we'll move along from there. Some of this stuff does go up early on my Patreon. There's stuff that I have in the notebook magic items and maps and things like that, and adventure stuff that goes up on my Patreon. If you are interested in getting any of that, the link is in the description. It's $1 a month, and you get access to everything. So knock yourself out. There is also a link for the Amazon wish list for the channel, and that's all I've got right now. It'll be a little bit before we come back because I'm not sure if we're going to make the next session because of a camping trip that's coming up. So we may have to skip one session, which means it'll be a month between games, or we may switch it to another night just to get the gameplay in. So, all of that being said, I hope you enjoyed the video. I hope you go check out the playlist and watch all the other videos that lead the story up to this point. And until next time, my friends, good gaming and good luck.